crazy. Like I said, I've been doing this since 2002, 2003, and I've got a ton of stories, a ton of celebrities that I've been able to interview. And it's funny because, you see a lot of people get into podcasting and they say, well, does your podcast bring you in money? And for me, to answer that question, my podcast hasn't necessarily brought me in money. It's the avenues that are created from podcasting, like I
Correct.
DJ. So
Correct.
I've gotten a ton of more DJ gigs. I've got to manage a singer because of my DJ experience and my management experience. I've gotten hosting gigs for mixed martial arts, doing ring announcing and stuff because of my podcasting and my hosting abilities. I do games. I've actually got games this weekend that I've got to call at Brockton High Stadium. So I do the EFL semi-pro football games because I do. So for those who are looking to get into podcasting, it's not about the podcast of bringing in money. It's the avenues that can be created. So you got to be kind of on your P's and Q's as to how you carry yourself, because if somebody feels like you can support their product or their event, you may get asked to host this event, and they'll pay you. People will pay you to host events, good money. So
of course, it's a phenomenal networking tool. Like
it is
podcasting. Like we met through a Facebook group. Right, like I came on your show, had a great time. We had a great conversation. Now we're following up here. Then we're gonna follow up again, and we'll see where the road takes us. But that wouldn't be possible if we just didn't hop on a podcast and talk. It helps that we have common ground, like being from this similar area, similar interests, right? And it's just like I heard 2002 from podcasts. It's like, oh my god, I have so many questions. So next one being, what was the community like? Because nowadays, podcasting is very, the community is great. It's very supportive. You still have those internet trolls. That's just the internet trolls. But what was the community like in the early days? I know you got laughed at, but was there still a lot of support there as well?
So here's the funny thing. Early on when you had podcasting, you still had hardcore radio people. And I knew a lot of radio people because being in AM, even though I was in AM radio, I knew a lot of people in FM. Some of my closest friends are on some of the top FM stations in Boston. And one of the things that people, laughed about was I remember going to my station manager about podcasting and talking to the Brockton newspaper about it in our community, and asked, hey, how about starting this podcast thing? And it wasn't really, like I said, it wasn't called podcasting, but I gave him the idea, and he looked at me and he was like, nobody's going to listen to a radio show that they missed. And those were his exact words. No one's going to ever listen to a radio show that they missed. And now it's huge. That's the whole thing now.
I know hindsight's 2020, but it's just like, what? I understand, like, up until that point, the whole world has been, if you don't see it live, you miss it and it's gone. So like, I can understand the in the moment thinking like that, but how do you not have the foresight to be like, but what if I miss it?
Right. And here's the other funny thing. So being in AM radio, one of the big things that used to bring money into radio stations were remotes. You had a grand opening, you call a radio station out, and the radio station would come out to your grand opening and do this remote for you, and they would host this live radio broadcast, and the radio guys would be there, and this is how radio stations made their money. What happened was that a lot of places got away from doing that and stopped doing remotes because, one, it was cumbersome. There was a ton of equipment that you had to be involved with. Then you had to link to the station in order to do this remote. What podcasting did was podcasting allowed you that you didn't have to be hooked to a radio station to go and do this remote. You bring your own equipment and you broadcast over the internet, and you wouldn't have to pay all these fees as a business. So I started doing a lot of these radio remotes as a podcast, and I was doing a ton of grand openings. I just bring my laptop, my cam, and then I broadcast over the internet, and they would be like, oh my God, there's no wires, there's no speakers, no loss of space. That was one of the first things. But early on in the community, like you asked, a lot of the radio people, a lot of the media people, like I said, they laughed at it. They thought this whole thing was a joke. I remember going down to the Patriots Super Bowl 2003. I went down when the Patriots won the Super Bowl, and I was podcasting then, but it wasn't podcasting. I actually went down there. I remember being on a plane, and I had wrote tons of articles. I had wrote a whole ton of articles leading up to this game and talking about how the Patriots were going to beat Pittsburgh and how they were going to beat the Rams. And I remember sitting next to a reporter going down the plane. He says, "Hey, aren't you that Keith guy?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, "Oh, you think the Pats are going to win this game?" I says, "I know they're going to win this game." And I broke it all down. And he's like, "Wow." He's like, "That's very," and then coming back on the plane, he was like, "Dag, you nailed it. You were dead on." I says, "I'm just letting you know." He says, "I'll follow your stuff." And I actually ended up getting on patsfans.com, and I was writing on there for a long time until I got into radio. And to be honest, podcasting got me into a movie. If it wasn't for my podcasting, I would have never been in the Game Plan with The Rock. I ended up getting casted as an extra, and then I was moved up to an actual football player in the film with The Rock. Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
I got that because of podcasting, and because of I would be reaching out to different people as hosts on my show and guests. And I reached out to the casting director for the movie. And she came on the show, and she's like, you know, we're casting for football players 6 feet or taller and this and that. And you're going to be in this film with The Rock. And at that time I was 5'11". I was like 3 inches too short. And she was like, "Keith," she's like, "just come on down." She goes, "I'll put you in as an extra." I'm like, "Okay." So she put me in as an extra, and then they liked my look. And she goes, "Oh no." She's like, "We're going to make you a football player." And they actually made me a football player. And I was on the opposing team against The Rock in the final game of that film. So